Hello and welcome to Dig It. I'm Peter Brown and hosting the show with me today is Chris Day. Hi Chris.
Hi Peter.
Wow, January in the garden. Happy New Year, Chris.
Happy New Year to you, Peter. Yep.
And, well, it's all about New Year's, new starts, New Year's resolutions.
It is, and plenty to look forward to, isn't it, in the garden? It's always exciting, isn't it, the month
Definitely.
of January.
We've had some good frosts recently, haven't we?
Oh, we have.
Yeah, it's hopefully the ground will dry out a bit because it still seems pretty waterlogged around here.
I'd say a lot of rain. In fact, I think at the middle of December, for example, they were saying that we'd already had 87% of our rainfall in this part of North Buckinghamshire, which is quite scary, so...
Yeah, but the reservoir's full and the aquifers are filling up again, so I suppose that's a good thing. And bog plants are doing well.
Indeed. And if you've got clay soils, well, you're unfortunate. We have to just battle on, don't we, regardless?
Well, that's it. So, what we got to go and see, and what's on?
Yeah, so in January you'd have thought there'd be very little, but actually there's quite a bit. So on the 1st of January, as this podcast... Today, indeed. If you could venture out to the Sir Harold Hillier Gardens, they've got a New Year's Day guided tour.
Okay.
Those wonderful gardens there, so you'd probably need to get quick off the mark to get there, but it's a really wonderful garden, Peter. I've visited it a number of times over the years, and it's always well worth a visit. Moving on into, well, a little bit of work as far as roses. There's a rose pruning masterclass by Michael Marriott over at Board Hill. That's over in Haywoods Heath.
Yeah.
And that's on Thursday the 18th. So if you really want to know everything about it, Michael Marriott is obviously one of the spearheading gentleman from obviously David Austin Roses, so he's got a lot of reputation behind him.
I haven't got any roses, so I've not had to do this yet, but is pruning roses in January the time to be doing it?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll have cut everything back, probably back in the autumn, but we start to think about next month doing the major pruning. But if you have got something rattling around, especially those climbers and ramblers might need to be reduced if the weather does take a nasty turn.
Okay, so something to do on a slightly less frosty day.
Indeed. And this is really exciting, Peter. So Saturday the 20th of January, National Tulip Day in the centre of Amsterdam. So for people living in Holland, sounds really good. So it's an opportunity in the afternoon of the 20th to basically kickstart the Tulip Festival. And basically they give out free bunches of tulips to all the people who visit. So and they gave out literally tens of thousands last year, apparently. So
okay,
yeah,
because it's the Keukenhof, is it?
That's it.
That's the massive gardens over there. That's well worth a visit if you're into your tulips.
Most definitely, yes, yeah, fantastic. And then. And then something quite close to us up in Buckingham here, we've got on the 27th of January, puzzle pictures. So this is really intriguing. So basically it's organised by the Buckinghamshire Gardens Trust, and it's a talk which looks at a series of paintings from the 16th to the 18th centuries which feature gardens, and basically it's to help the audience see beyond the obvious.
So picking out all the finer details.
Indeed, probably the garden designers, maybe the Capability Browns and all the other sort of, the quirkiness of English landscapes at that time.
Okay, and that's down in Aylesbury, so like you say, not far at all. Brilliant.
Most definitely. And then obviously towards the end of the month, the annual event, which of course is the RSPB Big Bird Watch between the 26th and the 28th. So obviously it's the UK's biggest wildlife survey.
Yep.
And of course it's been running since 1979. So we'll put the link on for that for everybody to get involved in. So that's the latter end of this month.
Excellent.
And then finally, if you've not already had enough of houseplants over the Christmas period and you're wanting to know what to do with your cyclamen, your poinsettia, it's Houseplant Weekend at the RHS Gardens at Bridgewater, obviously near Manchester. So they've got a whole weekend packed with obviously good opportunities to buy things, but also to learn more about our wonderful houseplants. And that's over at RHS Bridgewater.
Okay. Well, here's a question for you, Chris.
Yep.
So I was down at Blue Diamond the other day, and they had a giant flowered cyclamens.
Okay.
You know the ones I'm on about?
Yes, indeed. Well, the florist ones.
Okay. So they had them in their houseplant section. We've got them in our, I'm going to say, seasonal tunnel, so it's sort of sheltered but outside. Are they frost hardy?
They're not. They like it really, really cool. In fact, almost cold, but frost free. So that's why we tend to put them into our seasonal tunnel and if obviously there's any really nasty weather, we'd put some extra fleece over them. But they will take it down to almost zero.
Okay.
But anything more than that, then obviously they would succumb. Actually, in our houseplant area, it's actually quite warm for cyclamen, and they tend to prefer those cooler conditions.
Okay, so bring them in sort of whilst they're in flower on show, and then take them out in the garden and protect them from the frost. Or if you live in Somerset.
And in the house, just find the coolest, lightest window you've got, and they'll really enjoy those conditions.
They are fantastic. I love them. They're really good, aren't they?
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, nice one. And advance notice for February. What's going on?
Right. So it's our big Graft and Grow Day, Peter, at the Garden Centre. Yes. Yeah. So if you're not familiar, it's an opportunity to come and see some proper horticulture, some proper fruit tree grafting, and you can get
learn how to cut your fingers on a sharp knife.
Oh yeah,
no, we don't do that. We don't teach that. We teach you how to do it safely, hopefully,
and correctly, and horticulturally perfect there. And of course, it's a good opportunity to bring in varieties of apple trees or other fruit trees which you want to be grafted onto a rootstock, which will have rootstocks available for sale as well. So it's a really good. To learn a new skill, it's a great event, and we have some really good people here to guide you and manage you through the process too.
But I've always been really sort of cautious about the idea of doing a graft, and then I tried it, and it's actually, it's really exciting to see if it works and is it going to take. But it's not that hard once you've been shown the basics, and like you say, all you need is I think the first ones I did was with a little Opinel sort of gardening knife, I'll call it. So not a fancy razor knife or anything like that. And that's essentially all you need. If you want to get the most success, then obviously getting all the right gear and the sort of tape and what have you is possibly a little bit more important.
Indeed.
But you can, plants are brilliant in that way, aren't they? They just grow and grow and grow and keep trying. So
They will very accommodate. And the thing is, you see the process and you can obviously have a go yourself. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's trial and error sometimes, but it's, the actual grafting material, your own trees don't cost you anything, so you can have a go, and it's not an expensive process.
Well, that's it. And if you've got a huge old apple tree that has got a glorious fruit, but it's just too big, or you're moving house and you want to start again with it, it's a really good way of sort of keeping the genetics of your favourite fruit tree or plum tree or whatever it is to keep going. And
we often do get requests from people wanting to create like a family tree, so they might want more than one variety on a fair. So that's another good opportunity to do that.
I do like them. They're brilliant.
So come along. So it's between 10 and 4, and obviously there is a small charge for the grafting service and obviously for the rootstocks. But other than that, just bring yourself and your apple trees or fruit trees you want to perpetuate, if that's
brilliant.
The right word.
Great stuff. Sounds like fun. And what about winter gardens? Can you think of anywhere nice to go and visit on a nice frosty morning, Chris?
There's plenty, and to get rid of all that Christmas excess as well. Why not? There's plenty. Certainly, the great BritishGardens.co.uk website, which we've mentioned a few times, Peter, they've got some really good ideas. They're suggesting places like Anglesey Gardens and Abbey and Gardens over in Cambridge, Bodnant if you're over in North Wales, obviously Bressingham Gardens, including good old Foggy Bottom in Norfolk, and then of course you've got the Botanic Gardens, Savile Gardens over in Windsor, some really good ones actually out there, and obviously local ones, maybe local national trusts. Obviously we've got Stowe down the road, so
that's all. I always love the grass in the frost. If you've got a good long vista, then it's sort of not the regular green, but the sort of whitey green that the frost creates. It's a lovely colour. And
on some of those mornings where you get the bit of mist as well in the valleys, it looks
definitely
great as well.
Over a lake. That's always a lovely view, isn't it?
So take your camera out, or if you've got a decent phone on a decent camera on your mobile, get out there and get some photos as well. It's a great way of starting the new year, isn't it?
Definitely. And top 5s, Chris. What are we looking at this month?
Yeah, so what I've done to piece, I've looked at the top 5 selling trees of last year. So this is a snapshot. These are trees which are grown in pots. These are not bare rooted necessarily.
Right.
So there's a a shared top spot of Malus aros, which is that wonderful purple-leafed crabapple, which has lovely pink flowers and black fruits, and then wonderful autumn colour. It's a real good all-round tree. That's sharing the top spot with Cotoneaster conuba.
Okay.
Now, conuba is an evergreen Cotoneaster, so lots of lovely small flowers in the spring, and then lovely this time of year full of berries, which before the birds obviously take their share.
And are they a red or an orange?
It's an orangey red, I would say.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a really distinct colour, and of course it's a good small garden tree. Hence, that's why I suspect it's one of our top sellers. But,
okay.
And then in sharing the second place, we've got two joint second place. Malus red obelisk, which, as the name suggests, is very upright growing, and another upright growing variety, which I'm sure a lot of our Dig It listeners have in the garden. That's Prunus anamagawa. That's the famous flagpole.
Flagpole cherry, isn't it?
Yes.
It's a lovely plant.
It is indeed,
good
yeah.
Stuff. And then last place or third place in
this case, is another. It's a wonderful leafy Acer, big leafed. It's not a Japanese one called Brandywine, and the name suggests it has really good autumn colour. And it's one of these American varieties of Acer, so quite a big leafed one, but not too huge for the smaller garden. So an interesting top five.
Brilliant, great stuff. And if you're interested, our top 5 in Dig It episodes.
Oh, right, okay.
So, I thought, as it's the beginning of the year, maybe you listeners, if you haven't listened to the back catalogue, here are the most popular. So, starting at number 5 is composting with Rod Weston. And then 4th place, Cherry on Top with Vicky Grange, our local Horwood cherries. Very interesting.
Very tasty cherries too.
The best cherries, I think, around. And then in 3rd place, Queen of the Herbs, Jekka McVicker, telling us all about her life.
Oh, fantastic. Fascinating.
It was great. That was a really interesting episode. And in 2nd position, Cottage Gardening with Rosie Hardy.
Indeed, over Hardy plants down in the lovely part of Hampshire, yes.
And how to sort of grow container plants as well.
Yes.
She did some really interesting ideas on that.
Indeed.
That was good. And in 1st place,
You
guys are akin to my form of gardening. No dig gardening.
Oh, with Charles Dowding.
Yeah. Where we learn how to sit down, relax, and not do any digging.
And produce wonderful vegetables, which good old Charles does it on his wonderful garden estate.
Yeah, that was a revelation to me.
Yes.
I'd heard about it, but didn't really understand it.
Yeah, music to your ears, Peter.
Definitely. You know me, anything for a lazy life.
That's really good. And running a mixture of proper horticultural know-how as well there, some ornamentals and some edibles amongst that list too.
Definitely, yeah. So if you want to listen to a popular old episode, try those out.
Yeah, indeed.
And now it's the part of the show where we discuss what's in the news.
Indeed, and there's quite a lot of it to start the year, isn't there, Peter?
Definitely. Evergreen's got some big news.
So last bag of compost with Pete. So this was actually going back to last year, but basically they've been determined to take steps towards going 100% peat free. This is of course Miracle Grow and Evergreen, popular garden product which you'll see in most garden centres, and they've obviously made the decision now to pull it. So they are now totally peat free.
That's brilliant, isn't it? I mean, I think with the potential peat ban looming at the end of the year,
yes,
it does make sense that the manufacturers start pulling the plug on peat.
Yeah.
Like you say, sort of it was November, end of November, the last peat bag rolled off their production.
That's right,
line,
and they've been doing it for the last 30 years. So I suppose it's a bit of a cultural shock for that production. But
to be fair to them, they've been putting sort of reduced peat Miracle Grow out in the marketplace for a while, and I guess they're sort of they've now decided this year it is going to go through, and we will have a peat ban at the end of the year.
Most definitely, and I think we're all getting a little bit more savvy with what's out there on the shelves, and as we're now coming into the next few months of busy seed sowing time, we need to start thinking about those products on the shelves to start using in our greenhouses and on our allotments, maybe.
Definitely. That's it. And moving on to planting trees.
Yes, trees in all shapes and sizes. So there's lots of research.
Trees are in the news this month, aren't they?
They are, yes. And three quite interesting news stories, actually. Two related to, obviously, the ongoing saga of climate change and the fact that, obviously, not all trees are particularly good and suitable for our changing
They're
climate.
not all planted equal, are they?
No, that's the term. Yes, that's a good term. So Arit Anderson has said in her new book, Arit is obviously a well-known presenter on Gardener's World, that we need to start focusing on a wider ecosystem of trees in our garden. So, which is, I think, is sensible, as we've been saying all along, Peter. You know, forestries now are made up of more than one species. They have to be
diverse species is good for the bugs and the bees and all the things that live higher up on the food chain.
That's it.
And that's it. No longer are we planting just Norway spruce forests.
No, indeed, and resilience and in what you plant is going to be important in the future. So we'll be planting more, shall we say, Mediterranean style trees, because obviously one day they will obviously do very, very well in a very changing
Potentially,
climate.
if we keep on warming up. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So that's one report, and then of course the RHS obviously been involved in some others as well, including with the University of Sheffield, and they're looking at the whole area that climate change needs somewhat urgent attention. This is in conjunction with the National Trust. And again, one particular plant they point out there, which is a beautiful plant, is the Cornus cusa, one of the obviously the wonderful flowering dogwood. And they're saying that is not really sustainable now in lots of parts of the southern parts of the UK.
Really?
Yeah. It's a dogwood. It's a dogwood. So dogwoods generally like plenty of moisture, but of course it's the extremes of moisture. Either get too much or too little.
Okay. Yeah.
And
So they're not going to do very well in the future.
No.
Well, I thought the last story we got was quite funny. The idea that now, instead of going to prison or paying big fines for your speeding or your, what do we call them, lower order crimes, are they?
So drink driving, shoplifting, yes.
The reprobates can now go and plant some trees.
Well, that's
to pay back to the community for the error of their ways.
I think it's good. I think it's a very positive way of using. Obviously, out of badness comes some good, and in this instance, over the last the little news story actually says over the past 3 winters, 7,000 trees have been planted as part of the scheme. So that's 7,000 trees more than perhaps would have been planted.
Well, I suppose that's and it gives them diversification from picking litter up along the highways.
Indeed, and doing other things like that. But
menial tasks like that. So I suppose it's not a bad idea, is it?
No, not at all.
And keeping on trees, what about Wollomie pines?
Yes, so these wonderful pines. I remember, Peter, when the Google Map satellite picked out these Wollomie pines going back, 20, 30 years ago over Australia, and that's how they were identified as this group of greenery, and they thought, wonder what the tree is. That is quite significant. So they obviously took an expedition into that part of Australia and discovered the Wollomie pine. It's quite a new, even though it's been around since the dinosaurs, it's quite new.
Really? Okay.
It was around 20 million years ago. But the thing is, it's obviously we need to preserve it everywhere on the globe now, not just in Australia.
Okay.
And so they've been planted. So Forestry England get involved in botanic gardens in Sydney and the Botanic Gardens of Conservation as well. So they're all part of this way of making sure it's around in our botanic gardens as well. And you can buy the tree as well if you fancy growing one in your own garden. They do get big. So
I was going to say that I seem to remember they're quite enormous, aren't they? I can't remember why. They're quite an iconic looking sort of pine tree with big furry branches.
Big leaves, and I suppose it's a little bit like the Erica. It's the monkey puzzle. It's got that stance, grandeur. Yes, and fantastic it is too. So one to look out for, and I'm sure when you're doing your garden centre shopping, you'll probably may come across one on your travels, and if you've got the space, plant one, please.
Definitely.
And we've got quite a few things on the way as far as it's this time of the year. It's sort of the award season in gardening, isn't it, Peter? We've got So the Newt, which we were talking about the Newt last May because they are the sponsors of the RHS Chelsea Flower Show.
Yep.
And they've just picked up a big award.
Okay, what have they won?
So it's basically they claimed the top spot in the top 50 UK boutique hotel list.
Okay.
So it has a wonderful hotel. It has an amazing garden, and and it's all been obviously this garden is relatively new. 2019, it was effectively developed. Obviously, a lot of work went into it before then, and it's interesting when you see pictures of the Newt. It's this wonderful parabola, this amazing circular structure which basically houses their amazing orchard.
Okay, yeah.
They're well known for their cider. They produce a lot of cider on the site.
Haven't they got the biggest collection of apple trees in the UK or something?
That's right. Yeah. I think it was a record break, wasn't it?
Yeah.
We reported back last autumn.
That's
a big award for them. So it's the International Garden Tourism Award. So well done to the Newt.
And now moving away from trees onto their bark.
Okay.
We're going to talk about now. Is it lichen or lichen?
Oh, I've heard it said both. I would call it lichen. Yes.
I think it's I've always called them lichens.
Lichens.
But so that's a. Now, is it a plant or an algae or?
I think it's somewhere in between, isn't it? It's
a weird little growth that you get on the barks of trees.
That's it.
But it's not an epiphyte, is it? It's just a.
It just lives on the material.
On the surfaces, because you get them on stones and you get them on all sorts of things, don't you?
But you do notice at this time of the year, especially as the day lengths are increasing now, thank goodness, they become more and more noticeable. And of course, they almost sort of, if I use the word bloom, they obviously metamorphosize or they change as they develop in the spring. Obviously, they're going through their life cycle as well. But it's strange. We often get people coming into the garden centre with, holding big twigs of lichen infested stems, wondering what's gone wrong with their plant. Especially if they find it on an apple tree, it does panic them a little bit. And when you say it's actually very natural, people sometimes take them back. It's quite a natural.
Do you know if I'm wrong in saying this? Isn't it reindeer food? Is that what reindeer
eat? Yes, that's it. There's the connotations to yes, it is actually a part of a food chain, isn't it?
Yeah, it's reindeer that eat it. And, It's, but lovely colours. I like the yellow ones that you get. You can get some really, and the sort of ones that look a bit like moss, that sort of grey green colour. And I don't know how many different types of lichen or lichen there are, but I've certainly noticed quite a few in my lifetime.
They're very atmospheric, aren't they? Especially in sort of the edge of the forest, because they tend to, obviously, they need the light. But this campaign is spearheaded by Plant Life, of course, known for their. And they realise that obviously the UK has got a lichen lichen global importance, because obviously we've got a lot of different species there. But it's the report saying that we're losing many of these lichens to obviously nitrogen pollution, which I think they came back with a vengeance after the Industrial Revolution, but of course now that's probably changing because of obviously CO2 and warming. Yeah.
But other interesting fact: it's estimated that 7% of the Earth's surface is covered by them.
That's interesting. Yeah,
it's a huge area.
Yes. Gosh.
Enormous. But
so they are important, and we need to preserve them. So
definitely.
Yeah, good on that.
And sale of a common garden plant has been banned?
Yes. So this was reported in the Guardian newspaper, and basically we're all familiar with the Gunnera. I'm sure the
massive rhubarb.
Oh, the big rhubarb. Yes.
It's not a rhubarb though, is it?
It's not. No, you wouldn't want to eat it.
It looks very similar.
Yeah, I've been in gardens. In fact, I was at Capel Manor many years ago, and I actually was standing under the leaves and sheltering from the rain, because they produce such large leaves, and they're amazing plants. And of course, they die down to absolutely nothing during the winter, and then they put all that growth on in the spring, don't they? But it's a form it's a hybrid form which is basically being banned, and And this is new research conducted by the RHS, and they've revealed that the sales won't be of the varieties we're familiar with at the moment in garden centres, but this particular form of hybrid form has been earmarked to make sure that we don't get that the opportunity to buy it. So hopefully it'll disappear from the growers, so it shouldn't come through the supply chain.
Because is it the Gunner Manicata? Is it? That's the massive one.
That's the big one. Yeah, and that's fine. That's fine.
And, it's amazing plant. If you've got a big enough garden for it, or you want some shade in a small garden,
and you've got a good water supply,
next to a lake or a running stream, they do really well, don't they?
Yeah, good in clay soils. Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay.
And I was going to say the other sort of story related to leaves, which was quite interesting. This was leaves and plant fossils was a story taken up by one of the newspapers, and it's related to these. Which, when you look at them, they do look like almost sort of leaf structures which have been preserved as fossils, but actually they've actually turned out to be baby marine turtles. With a bit of, and I think it's just a fascinating thing how we can be cajoled into thinking things are not quite what they seem.
Well, I suppose fossils that have been around for so long, and
yes,
scientists back in I would say 1800s, 1900s, maybe when they were discovered, possibly didn't have the ability to do the research that we can on these things
indeed.
now.
But if you get a chance to see that online, the pictures of it actually in colour are quite spectacular. They're really good. But it just shows you, doesn't it? We can be fooled at that stage. But good on that side.
And the YPHA has hit a membership milestone. So this is the Young People in Horticultural Association. Mm-hmm. Now, it's been going not that long, I'm going to say, so 2020 or
so like 3 or 4 years maybe.
Yeah, and and Liam from Old Railway Line, friend of ours, he's been spearheading it. At the meetings I go to with him, he's often chatting to me about it, and it's a really good idea. I think it's a great way for young people who are in horticulture who want to communicate about sort of what they're up to and share ideas and plans. They can do that through sort of Facebook and these modern platforms that you and I possibly aren't quite so au fait with.
I suppose it's a little bit way how the young farmers sort of started their journey of getting people involved and getting a sense of community, I suppose, isn't it, in there as well. But certainly, a couple of shows I've visited, Peter, there's always a stand, and they're all obviously actually looking for new members, so younger people to get involved there.
Yeah, and I think they do quite a lot of meetups and go for sort of tours around suppliers, so they get to learn an awful lot about our industry as well.
Yeah, and 700 is quite a milestone for the membership, isn't it?
Definitely.
In literally, nearly, obviously just over 3 years. Yeah, well done to them. So we'll put a link to how to find out more about the YPHA on the show notes.
And this one always interests me, sort of the Pantone of the year.
Oh, God,
it's a lovely sort of name for a colour of the year.
Yeah, indeed, yes.
So what's 2024?
So 2023, if you remember, was vivid magenta.
Yeah.
Instantly forgettable. Although I think we had a few plants with that sort of colour. I think there's some petunias came in, which I thought, that. So this year, peach fuzz is going to be the Pantone colour of the year. Described, and I love the descriptions here. It's almost like describing a wine, isn't it? A velvety, gentle peach, whose all-embracing spirit enriches the mind, body, and heart. Yes, so it's all about selling the colour, I'm sure that colour. I mean, peach, in a way, is sort of off yellow, off orange. I mean, it sort of sits quite nicely in the colour palette, doesn't it?
It's a nice soft colour, I always think. Yeah, you can...
Unlike vivid magenta last year, which was a bit...
Well, last year, if I can describe it, it was all sort of blacks and greens and magentas and sort of really strong colours, whereas this is dulling down a bit more.
This is more romantic, isn't it? Your traditional gardening, and maybe if we have a better summer like last year, then we can actually enjoy that sort of colour and that sort of warm tones to the.
Well, pansies will do well, I should imagine.
Oh,
I can always picture sort of pansies as yellows and peaches and oranges.
Indeed, and and of course things like the summer bedding marigolds and things, they're going to be nicely sitting in there as well, aren't they? And should give those. So I'm sure you're going to see that, and of course this. Pantone colour of the year filters through home as well, so I'm sure you'll start to see that in your your local homeware stores too.
Brilliant, good stuff. Okay.
And there's more trends as well. This is obviously January is all about forecasting everything and everything. Some of these are quite good. One suggestion is we're going to be prioritising pollinators, and we're going to be attracting more butterflies, bees, beetles, and such like, which is good, and I think we've been doing that anyway. So it's probably not really new news, but it's one of the many different things which you can look out for. Well, one of the things this American study was suggesting that one of the colour ranges which might come in is the goth look. So like we were saying about the last year's colour, that might start coming into the own, which actually, thinking about the purples, they might work well with this year's colour of the year maybe. I don't know, but watch this space.
Interesting. And Edimentals. It's a lovely title, isn't
Yes,
it?
it's a great word, isn't it? And
2024, the year of the Edimentals.
So, as we get from the name, it's a hybridised word of edible plants and ornamentals. So, it goes without saying. So, plants which look good, which you can eat in your border, which I'm sure suits a lot of people.
Well, especially if you've got a slightly smaller garden and you want to get a multi-use sort of flower stroke vegetable garden going. And I always think when I go down the allotments, chards are the beautiful red stems.
Wonderful.
And I think a few people grow the sort of multicoloured ones as well, and they've got the yellows and the reds, and they're amazing. And also those lovely, are they Chinese lanterns, Chris?
Phasalis franchetii. It's a herbaceous plant. It comes up and does its thing spectacularly in the summer, and then produces those lovely orange. Basically they're basically like husks, if you like, of the seed head, aren't they? Yes.
Okay, because when you eat them, they're sort of quite juicy. I seem to remember my grandmother grew them, and I always remember eating them, and she used to shout at me. I don't think I was meant to be eating them.
And then you've got things like globe artichokes, which I grow in my own garden, but they get huge. I mean, they tower over about 7-8 foot. I mean, they are
they're impressive. Put it that way.
And the bees love them. I mean, the bees are really attracted to them when they're doing their thing. And those wonderful blue flowers. I mean, you're supposed to cut them before the flowers open, and obviously steam the flower heads. I've never got them to that stage, to be honest with you. I've let them flower because I do love the wonderful blue colour they produce.
Excellent.
And I think the whole idea of this is, as you say, making your plot work for you in a very positive way. One thing I saw many years ago, Peter, I saw Lilo Rosso, that the wonderful
Lilo
lettuce,
Rosso, the lettuce, yeah,
used as an edging plant around a flower bed.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess that's fine until you want to have a salad for lunch.
Yes.
And then
So you'd have to go along it because
you could castellate it, I suppose.
You could, yeah. But the idea with that one is you can pick it's cut and come again, so you could snip it, and you didn't really spoil the effect.
Okay.
But I think it'd have a limited run, but it did look good, and it was quite cheap to produce. If you think about a package of seed, you'll get literally hundreds of lettuce plants. So
It's a really good idea.
to do that as well. But and of course all the usual herbs as well would come into that. So maybe in the garden centre we'll have to have an edimental section, maybe to try and boost the idea of mixing and have no sort of barriers when it comes to growing vegetables and flowers and fruit together.
Yeah, why not? It's a good idea. And I suppose another way of doing borders is, rather than actually creating a border, you can do more sort of natural plantings that create sort of areas, I suppose you could call them. Is that the sort of thoughts behind this?
Yeah, I think they're trying to put, and I think it's all part of again, I think climate change, isn't it? A lot of these plants are more resilient to drought and to more difficult growing conditions. So why not grow your more, shall we say, wilder looking plants in cahoots with your grasses and do a mixture, a little bit like good old Adrian Bloom was talking about in developing his Foggy Bottom. He was trying to, in a way, move the borders across, wasn't he, to try and integrate different plants. So this sort of moves on to that as well, and of course it means you can grow a wide range of plants. It might appear to some people as a bit of a hodgepodge, but done nicely and used, ornamental grasses, as we know at the garden centre here, sell very well. And if they give you the structure and the interest, and then if you just inject some bits of colour into there, then you've got a really easy and attractive palette of plants to grow.
Yeah, Definitely, it's a good idea. And our stone supplier Kelkay have been in the news, haven't they? They're doing Mediterranean landscapes for 2024. They think that's the way forwards.
They do, which obviously suggests that the changing climates as well. So I mean, obviously, 2023 was a little bit on the damp side through the summer, but generally, as we know, it's warmed up an awful lot. So why not try and create those wonderful effects by using obviously aggregates, gravels to show off the rest of your plants.
Well, I can remember, I say back in the 80s when purple slate became the new thing. And to this day, I mean, I've still got a border around the garden and in purple slate, and it works. And it keeps the weeds down. It's really good. But obviously, Beth Chatto does a whole garden.
She does. Her gravel garden is legendary with different types of gravels and obviously those wonderful plants which enjoy those sort of conditions. So,
from a water point of view, gravel gardens are great because they get the drainage straight. The rain goes straight into the ground rather than down if drains. It's a block paving or what have you. So that's good. So Mediterranean colours, I guess.
Yeah.
What's that sort of whites and golds?
The autumn. Yeah, I mean the autumn gold chippings, which is part of the Kelkay, is always a popular one, isn't it? As a choice. But yeah, classic whites. If you want to create some really, and again that against some of your plants would look really nice, wouldn't it? Some of your things, your phormiums and your heucheras and such like, which would look really really good. And obviously using some boulders and sort of pebbles, large pebbles can nicely create a nice
and
backdrop.
A few terracotta pots as well. I always think of the Mediterranean when you see a lovely sort of white gravel with a terracotta pot on or something. That sort of colour combination.
And of course, if we are getting hotter summers, terracotta is obviously a lot easier to manage as far as watering as well, isn't it? Which we know, and it keeps the roots cooler, unlike plastic pots. And
good stuff.
But
okay.
If you're looking at Kelkay, they have a really good website, and there's lots of calculators there. So if you want to work out how much gravel you need to use to fill an area, that's quite a useful tool, because it's the question we tend to get asked most, isn't it? How many bags do I need to for this little project? So,
I know. I was doing my front garden, and it's only a small sort of patch. It must be 10 foot by 10 foot, and it already had some gravel down that the previous owners had sort of put down, and it needed topping up. And it's only, I would say, half a square metre or something like that, and a couple of other bits that were a bit sort of thin, shall we say. And I thought half a dozen bags, and soon disappears.
It does,
really
doesn't it?
does.
It's like mulch, isn't it? You put down a few bags of mulch, and where has it gone? It's the same with gravel. So
definitely, and those calculators are a good indication as to what you might need.
That's right, and especially if you're having the product delivered, it's you need to do your homework, get it right. Definitely.
So that's kelkay.com. You can go to for that.
Yeah, indeed, we'll put the link there. And a rather explosive story to end on, Peter.
The final news story to take us out with a bang.
I saw this on. I was on both the BBC and ITV News. I mean, it was it was the end finally section of the news story. And basically, this bomb, and it was a bomb, served as a garden ornament for over 70 years in this couple's garden.
Yep.
Down over in Milford Haven in Pembrokeshire, down in Wales there.
Right.
And basically, it'd been used there. It'd been there since after the war, and was found on a local beach.
Right.
And of course, they didn't obviously realise it was a bomb. Obviously, it wouldn't have moved. And it's been there as a fixture. And the photograph,
as a garden ornament for 70 odd years.
Yes.
And the lady of the house used it as a sort of banging and cleaning post for her trowel. Quite a useful bit of kit to have, but thank goodness it never went off.
So the conclusion was that on the Thursday the bomb squad found that there was a bit of life in the old girl. I just love the term there.
Well, they took it to a quarry and they detonated it, and it went pop.
And they just said it's likely to go to a museum now. So it's got a lot of story to it, hasn't it? Yeah,
brilliant.
But I'm sure on YouTube you'll probably find the video of the story, because it make you smile. And maybe just have a look in your garden and just have a look at your ornaments, maybe. Indeed.
Excellent, good stuff. Right, so I guess it's that time of the show where you give me some jobs to do, Chris.
Yes, and of course there's quite a bit to do, isn't there?
January, start of a new year, start of a new job list.
And lots of things to be planting. And it's interesting, you know, on the hedging front, we're well into the bare root season now. And one thing which popped up on my Facebook page literally today, Peter, is Claydon Estate, which is obviously National Trust. They put a little did you know in that back in 1950 there was an estimated 1 million kilometres of hedgerows in the UK.
Right.
And of course that basically reduced by half back in 2017. So hedgerows are, you know, they are a missing part of the jigsaw now. We encourage people to plant, you know, native hedges. Even in the smallest of gardens, they are very adaptable. So, maybe have a think about if you're taking out, you know, your old Landi or your laurel hedge, looking for a replacement, then get some natives in there and try and help the wildlife, help the bees and the butterflies. And it's the time to be doing it, really.
Well, yeah, this time of year is really good. And I know a friend of mine sort of he'd moved house and had quite an open front garden and wanted a nice low hedge, so I suggested a honeysuckle hedge or a Lonicera. Can't think of the full name.
Well, Lonicera nitida.
Nitida. That's the one. And I think he was expecting an instant sort of hedge, and I turned up with these plants that were, I would say, 12 inches tall and not really that much. And I think he was a bit disappointed, to be honest with you, when he first saw them.
Oh dear.
And they've been in there now, I would say 6-7 years. And I spoke to him last month, and he was like, wish I'd never asked for that hedging. Every year now I have to cut it back, and he's got a lovely hedge. It must be 2 foot tall, and so he's done a nice little sort of box
Style.
section, sort of a box style. And it's a really neat little hedge, but he has found that it does require a little bit of maintenance, but
all good things do,
don't they? But it looks really smart, and I think it surprised him how quickly it's turned into a decent little hedge from such tiny little plants.
Yeah, no, it's Lonicera is obviously one we tend to recommend, especially if you want something tough and robust, especially.
Relatively good in all situations, and also not that expensive. I mean,
no,
I think they're £2-3 a plant. I'm going to say,
indeed,
and a couple of years you get yourself a nice little hedge.
That's it. Yeah. So
something to replace your box with, because that's something I've noticed. Walking around Northampton recently, there's just hedges that are just totally dead, and one of the box trees, it's a specimen tree, I suppose you call it. It must be 10 foot tall.
Yes.
4 or 5 foot wide, utterly leafless.
Yeah, that's the caterpillar, I suspect, or the blight, or both. I mean, unfortunately.
So,
I mean, last year the wet weather of 2023, you know, the damp summer, which obviously affected all our gardens, you know, was perfect storm for our box blight. It just loved those conditions, which is not good as well. So plenty of other things to be getting on with, Peter. Yeah, maybe if you've got a bit of warmth, you've got a heated greenhouse or a porch, warm porch, or a conservatory, you might want to starting some of your half-hardy bedding plants off. I know it sounds like, I'm thinking of pelargoniums, geraniums, because they take a while to get going. I love growing geraniums, pelargoniums from seed there, because you know that you're going to get a really nice plant, you know, after 2 or 3 months from that.
Yeah.
The other thing, of course, continue tidying, not tidying by cutting back, because of course we're now told to keep our gardens a little bit awry to help nature. But obviously, some things will not to be trimmed back as we see plants starting to put some new growth on, perhaps from the end of January. Yep. We'll start seeing, obviously, bulbs appearing in the shop probably towards the end of January with the summer flowering bulbs. So, scarily.
That hardly seems like yesterday, and we're getting rid of all the autumn bulbs.
I know, yeah. So, I mean, good old lily bulbs, if you get those in, especially if you want to stagger your displays of lilies, try and get those in over the next few weeks as well. Right. And... I mean, the usual things, try and avoid walking off your lawns, especially in frosty weather, otherwise you'll leave some nasty marks through the course of the spring. And I suppose if we've the problems we've had over the last 2 or 3 months with the amount of rainfall we've had, maybe when we do get some dry spells, maybe do a little bit of aeration of your lawn, if that's a thing. I might be tempted to wait until February for that, but again, you've got to work where you're living, haven't you? Really, and if it is dry, maybe capitalise on that as well. And if you've got a lawnmower, then obviously, and it needs a service, make sure you get it in nice and early. So it can become
ready for the spring and when you're back on full-time cutting. But as you may remember, when we had our lawn care podcast, Mr. Hedges-Gower was suggesting you can mow your lawn all year round.
Indeed.
But not as often, not as frequently, shall we say, in the winter.
And a higher setting as well to make sure you don't take it out. But yeah, indeed, as we've had in mild weather, you've got to work with the weather conditions, haven't you, as well? And and the usual things. I mean, we've through December we've had some really cold nights, but keep an eye on those half hardy plants and maybe give them a little bit of protection, a fleece jacket or a bit of horticultural fleece just in those really cold nights as we go in there. And on the vegetable patch for our allotment growers, then it's time to think seed potatoes. And it's
chitting and keep them out of the frost, but somewhere cool.
Indeed,
and
plenty of light.
Leave them to chit, and that's it.
Yeah. Complete finish your winter digging. If the weather conditions allow, if it's been too wet, then stay off your soil. Wait until next month maybe. Check over your store of vegetables. Keep an eye on those. Just make sure that everything's going to plan and they're and obviously you're using them. And also, January, it's a good time to actually sort of plan, your seed purchases and get a list of things you want to grow. Remember, grow things you're going to eat.
Definitely. I'm going to try broccoli this year, Chris.
Broccoli, yeah.
Is that an easy one to grow?
Purple sprouting broccoli, I would say, it's going to be probably... I think it's going to be easier than cabbages.
Okay.
Yeah, and certainly easier than cauliflower.
Well, I grew some white sprouting.
Okay.
And that seemed to do okay. And it was just sort of picking it frequently enough was my problem. But, so you think do sproutings rather than actual broccoli?
I'd maybe try both. Try and go for a mixture of colours of the sprouting. Certainly, it's one of my favourite vegetables. That's
purple sprouting is a delicious vegetable.
It is,
it's not one that you see so often in the supermarket.
No,
so.
And then when you do, it needs to be in season, doesn't it? Otherwise, it looks a bit. It never looks particularly appetising when you see it.
That's it.
Yeah, and with some seed sowing you might want to do again. Weather-wise, you might want to get some first early peas in there, Feltham first, and some of your broad beans. That would be a good time to do. And again, if you've got a little bit of space in a cold frame, you might want to start some early sowings as well under a bit of protection.
Okay, cool.
So plenty good there as well. Fruit garden-wise, complete your pruning of your apples and pears. Certainly, by the end of this month, you need to get those done.
Right.
Prune your autumn fruiting raspberries, so that means cutting all the canes down to literally an inch or so of soil level, but make sure it is the autumn cropping ones, not your summer ones, otherwise you're going to be short of raspberries this summer.
Yeah, because it's second year sort of wood, as they call it, that they grow on, isn't it?
Yeah, so. And a good generous mulch as well, so once you've cut them back, get some nice some compost from your compost heap or a bit of planting compost or something just to improve the soil where you've cut back to too early to start feeding, but a mulch will be good. And then obviously check your tree stakes if you put some new trees in. Maybe if you do like to keep your fruit trees clean of overwintering pests, you can use organic winter washes, but you do that every other year, so if you try and do those as well. And of course, get your fruit trees in, planted wise, bare root. I noticed we've got some really nice strawberry runners in now in the garden centre. So look out for those on your travels. It's a good way a much cheaper way of replanting your strawberry beds. Strawberry beds last about 5 or 6 years and then they run out of steam. So maybe got those as well. So plenty to be doing.
Definitely.
Yeah, and if that doesn't get rid of a few of the calories after the Christmas excesses, I don't know what will.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, Chris, well, what else do we need to cover off now? Thanks, I suppose.
Oh, yes, some thank yous, yes.
Because as you guys probably have worked out by now, Chris and I aren't the most technically savvy people in the world.
Indeed.
However, we did come across some comments that some of you have left, and we're touched. It's
Yeah.
really lovely. So thank you
Yes.
to all of the ones that we haven't yet read and seen.
Yeah.
Because we don't know where they are.
Indeed.
But we came across one.
Yeah,
Oh,
indeed.
thank you,
From Andrew Terry. Thank you, Andrew. And it is going back a little while, but a lovely, some lovely words. If I may, I'll read them out because I think it's quite nice. And the title of your review was Easy Listening, Great Learning. And Andrew wrote, I'm pretty new convert to gardening and growing flowers, so this podcast has become a really helpful resource for me. I've learnt something new in every episode, and the two presenters, I think that's me and you, Peter, are very easy to listen to. Definitely one of my favourite podcasts.
Brilliant.
So that was really nice, and feedback is good. And likewise, if you want to know, if you want looking for particular guests, or you want to learn a different area of horticulture,
Yep.
let us know.
Definitely. Always give us some feedback. We love hearing from you.
Yeah.
And as always, please tell your friends about us and share. I would say on your social media maybe or something
Indeed.
like that if you're into that sort of stuff. But yeah, I mean, ultimately for us, the more people who listen to us, the happier we feel.
yeah, indeed.
And hopefully the more people we can educate, I suppose.
Maybe inspire and just have an answer. And we've got if you're listening to the podcast, you've got a common interest. You love plants, you love gardens, and you love gardening, and that's what it's all about.
Definitely. Brilliant. Okay. Well, thanks again, Chris.
Pleasure, Peter. We'll see you next month.
Speak to you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Today's show was brought to you by Buckingham Garden Centre and Nurseries. The show was hosted by Chris Day and Peter Brown. The show was produced by Peter Brown. And our thanks to Chiltern Music Therapy for providing the music. Thanks for listening.
At Chiltern Music Therapy, we want everyone to know the difference that music can make in their lives. From parents and their premature babies in hospital to grandparents with dementia. We provide music therapy and community music services to people of all ages and needs across England. We work both digitally and in person in people's homes, care homes, schools, hospitals and hospices. Find out more at chilternmusictherapy.co.uk.